There have been a couple announcements since the Warcraft Direct on Wednesday. A couple, not every announcements. You can't even really say that because they've just been through interviews, which is pretty common for them to do this after like a big media dump. I guess everybody gets their chance to interview people and then they all go live in the coming days. But yeah, a couple big ones here. I don't know like how many different interviews there have been, but this one here really caught my attention. And then there's also kind of one that I think maybe was probably not meant to be done, but yeah, well, let's talk about this one first. A better curve for Mythic Plus difficulty and rewards is the topic. Here's what Ian said. This is to Windows Central on these random websites. On Mythic Plus, I think this was a season of experiments. Yeah, I mean, that's a good way to put it. We changed the way fixes work, the way progression is structured, and we've been iterating based on feedback. A big focus for the team right now is to smooth out some particular pain points in specific dungeons, while also looking at class balance. We also don't feel like we have a proper on-ramp into the system. Very interesting point. For a lot of people hitting level 8 delves, you're getting very powerful rewards at that point. When you look across there to Mythic Plus, it can feel like there's no point to doing anything below 7 Mythic Plus, and 7 and up is actually quite hard. Is it? If you're someone without experience of dungeons to begin with, 7 is not the best point of entry, and it certainly wasn't designed to be a point of entry. So we think some players are hitting a cliff wall. We will see a lot of people bouncing off that would have previously had a home in the early Mythic Plus tiers. So for season 2, that's one of the big things we're going to address there. So it's kind of like a big announcement to even say that, but they don't really say what they're going to do. But they said it just wasn't something we could change in the middle of season 1. So let's talk a little bit about this topic because I feel like this is very, very important. And I guess this is probably the result of, or this is the culprit of everything that's been frustrating the lower tier level players. Okay. And I didn't really put two and two together. There's been a lot of videos that I made on this topic now that have been kind of not necessarily directly on the topic, but as well like central to the topic. And usually, like, there'll be like 100 comments of people complaining, and there'll be like one comment of somebody saying, like, well, this is because of delves, right? And I didn't kind of put much credence into it, but it's actually true. And more people should have been saying this the whole time. A lot of these people who feel like they can't progress, those people would have had a better, smooth progression if it wasn't for delves. So you have this problem here where delves actually are like a very, very lucrative feature. They give you almost too much power, and I think they're being used by people who really kind of don't deserve that power. I mean, it kind of sucks to say that out loud, but it's really the truth, right? Because if you're failing a 7, like if this is actually applying to you, if you're going into a 7 and a 7 is actually quite hard and you don't feel like you can progress at that level, you don't really deserve the hero track gear, right? Like, I mean, that's just it's kind of become this problem here where the gear rewards end up being like so spread out across these different pieces of content that you kind of almost like are trying to like, okay, is looking in the window like, is that one easier, is this one easier? The delves are the easiest one right now, right? So to get the gear that you're getting from delves and then you take it into content, you should be ready for it, right? Like if you're somebody who's catching up or somebody who's kind of above that average point there, then it's great because delves offer you a very quick way to gear up and you can kind of walk right into the harder content. But if you're doing like just like organically exploring content and you're like, oh, which one's the easiest way to get gear? Oh, it's delves, right? Because I'm sure there's a million videos out there telling people like how to best gear up, right? When you are not very good at the game. Yeah, this is a good place to go. And I bet that a lot of people are getting stuck in there because of that. And then they're going into other content that now they have gear for, that they believe they have gear for, but they really don't have the skill for. So the delve system really caused this problem, and I think this is, unfortunately, not really something that you can solve. So I'd love to hear what they plan on doing, because unless you plan on just not having delves give gear, like you're gonna have this problem, and this isn't really even a problem with Mythic Plus. It's just like it's the same problem that exists in normal raid, but nobody really cares about normal raid, right? Because like you don't have to do normal to do mythic raid, right? Whereas you kind of have to do a 7 to be able to do a 12. Like that's kind of the problem that the game has in Mythic Plus. So it's a very, very unique problem, and I'd love to hear some of your guys' thoughts on this. How do you think they're going to address it? For me, I would imagine they're going to just probably end up nerfing to the ground again. Like the low level tiers, they're just going to keep making them easier and easier, which honestly is not even that big of a problem in my eyes. But I can't come up with any way to address this. I really can't. It's like you get gear, like it'd be like if you logged on every day and you got one mythic track piece, or even more direct, like you just logged on and you got every piece, like you were fully geared, right? And then there would be some people who would say like the content that they're supposed to be doing. I mean, there wouldn't really be any content that would give you rewards, but let's just pretend that there was some reason to continue doing 12s, Mythic Raid, whatever high end content exists, right? They would say it's too hard, right? Because they don't really have that perspective. Like it's not that they don't it's not that they think it's too hard, it's that they don't know that they're not good enough for it yet. It's a really weird concept. And I don't know how you fix this because delves just are way too easy compared to everything else that would give hero track gear. So yeah, interesting concept. They also talk a little bit about this. I'm not even going to read this because this is not satisfactory to me. He basically says like crests are working great. And I don't know that they're necessarily talking about Mythic Plus, but it kind of gets lumped into the Mythic Plus concept. They're basically just confirming they're not going to go back to the old days of Valor where you can farm a 2 and upgrade gear from the highest level of content. And I don't expect them to do that at this point, but I would really like to see, if you guys haven't heard me talk about this, I would really like them to do something where you can upgrade Mythic Plus gear into Mythic track gear. Something from the completion only goes up to hero, and we don't really want hero. Like as a Mythic Plus player, you need Mythic track gear to really be pushing the top end of the difficulty, and this is insufficient. So I don't know how that basically whoever asked for Titan Forging to be removed, we've still been paying for that sin for like I mean, this is like 7 years now that we've had bad Mythic Plus gearing because of that removal of Titan Forging. So yeah, I don't know how we get them to care about this. I don't know that they even do. I think they honestly don't, because I think a lot of people would then use the excuse of Mythic Plus being more lucrative to farm, and people say this kind of thing all the time about rating and the race to world first and stuff like that. But one way or the other, my solution to this is to have a system like we have with crafting, where you can create something from the currency that you get, and then you can use said currency to upgrade the hero track gear into mythic track gear. So for example, right now 90 gilded crests turned into some kind of enchanted thing, and you can use that to craft a mythic piece, right? So you, instead of crafting a mythic piece, you can also use that to upgrade a hero track piece into the mythic track. It would just go from whatever hero track to the bottom of mythic track, and then you'd be able to upgrade it again further there. I think that would be beyond fair. Like that's actually a bad, like I think most people would probably not want that. Like I've been talking about that for months now, but there's not a single item in my inventory that I would use that on, right? So it's not very good, but it's fair. I think it's like something that should exist, because after we saw Mop Remix, how you can literally upgrade a piece of gear that you got at level 2 into the best piece of, the best item level in the game. It's like how are we still behind on this in live WoW? It's like it really opened my eyes on that topic. So I do think that there needs to be a way to jump tracks, like jump hero to mythic or even veteran to whatever. And I don't know why they don't think that would be a good thing. I guess they just don't look at it like. Basically, I think the way they look at it is the tracks have become like not necessarily something they wanted, but something that people been asking for, so they are giving them that. And now it's like, well, we're not giving you more than that. We just kind of gave you a concession here. But anyway, there's another big post that we do want to take a look at, and that is about the full rotation. Now, I have no idea why this got talked about, especially considering it's a German interview. It makes me think that like I don't like is Ian even German? Like I don't really don't understand this, why this happens, but it's like it seems to me like there was some cross up, right? Because early on in the week they're like, we haven't revealed the dungeons yet, and then in some random German interview, is this maybe like a really big? I mean, let's be serious. How many German people are there playing WoW that only speak German? I don't know, but anyway, yeah, I guess it's a big website, and so he decided to reveal it there. So we have the full rotation now. And this is a really wacky season for a few reasons, but we have the War Within dungeons. Obviously, we have Cinderbrew, I'm just going to go ahead and say something about each of them. Cinderbrew Meteor, I do expect to be the best Mythic Plus they've ever made. I think it's got a ton of big AoE pulls, and everybody loves that. And provided it doesn't have any crazy issues with count, like in the past, this dungeon's kind of linear. So, provided the count is not going to be like squirrely to the point where you're using an invis pot twice in hallways just to skip mobs, then I think it's going to be looked at as one of my favorite dungeons, as well as a good dungeon overall. And then Dark Flame Cleft, the complete opposite of that. Well, I think the dungeon, about 75% of it is going to be great. And then I think that last boss and everything around that last boss is going to be the worst in the entire season. And yeah, we'll see how that plays out. I hope that they will change how that works, how that dark area works, because as a tank, I just don't like it's just going to be abuse after abuse. You're going to have to go get the mobs, but then you're going to be dragging the mobs away from the light, so nobody's going to be able to attack them. And people have to go get the candles. So either the tank does that and drags all the mobs to get the candles, or the DPS does it, and then the DPS are complaining because they have threat. Like it's going to be a mess. And I really think it slows the pace of the dungeon down to like a snail's crawl. Like you're just now sitting there staring and waiting. So anyway, Rookery, I think this is going to be a great one too. I really like this dungeon on normal. I can't really conceive of why it would be better on Mythic Plus than it is on normal, but I do hope that as long as it's tuned well and balanced well, this will be looked at as like a mid, this is like an averagely good dungeon. Not like amazing, but it's going to be solid. And then Priory of Sacred Flame is another one that I think is going to be outstanding. It's got a lot of really interesting trash, a lot of very difficult parts to it, which I think is a good thing for the Mythic Plus community. And the only big complaint I would see is that there's a lot of stuff that kind of goes on the ground, right? Like the big consecrate is going to be a big issue. So maybe area denial is not necessarily the most fun thing. But anyway, then we have our 4 new dungeons, which they had already revealed. One to be Motherlode. Obviously, Motherlode is my favorite from BFA. And I think this is another great one for Death Knight. Again, a lot of really interesting trash, a lot of things you can death grip, a lot of things you can stop, a lot of things you can AMS. And then all the bosses in there are very, very good for Blood Death Knight. They're all very, very good for Blood Death Knight. So probably the best dungeon for Blood Death Knight that I can ever remember. And then we have our new Operation Floodgate, which is a new dungeon. It is not a mega dungeon, but they're actually going to make 2 small dungeons for the 2 patches that we're going to have. And that's going to be a mess because nobody's going to know it. Like every other dungeon in this pool is going to not be new. And then there's going to be one new one. So you better make this one the easiest one. Like I know you probably shouldn't encourage Blizzard to do this. And I don't know that they even do it on purpose. But if this dungeon is like, imagine if this is like tuned like, City of Threads or Grim Patrol, it's just going to be like a 0% upgrade rate for the first few weeks. Like, I don't know why they even do this. But we'll see how they handle the season. Maybe the dungeon will come out and then we'll have a few weeks before Mythic Plus opens, right? Because that's how it worked in The War Within. The War Within season 1 started and we only had Mythic 0 for a full week. So that may happen. All right. So if that's the case, we better get in there. All right, I'll be doing a lot of Operation Floodgate that first week, but definitely be on the PTR testing this. And then they just, like I said in this random German interview, Ian confirmed that Doggensteins are going to be Bitinghausen in Theater of Pain again. So Theater of Pain was definitely not my favorite. It was probably the only dungeon I didn't feel like was a great Mythic Plus in Shadowlands, and a part of it was because of how many bugs there were. If you guys want to go look through the Shadowlands like playlists and stuff, there's a lot of crazy, wacky moments in this one dungeon. So yeah, I think it's going to be better. I will say it has the best last boss ever. Morgetha, I can't remember her name, but it was just unbelievable voice acting, crazy good mechanics. I'm really excited for this dungeon to come back. Even though I think it's not one of the better ones, it's a good dungeon in this pool. I think this is a good dungeon for this pool. And then we have Operation Mechagon Workshop, so not Junkyard. You would think that they would do one of these. People were talking about another dungeon that should come with the Goblin theme would be Workshop or Junkyard, but yeah, Workshop, another one from BFA, and we did just have Workshop. Very strange. So this is kind of opening a new discussion point here because we did just have Workshop in Season 4 of Shadowlands, so that was only like 2 years ago now, and it is back a third time now. So that's very interesting because a lot of people have been talking about things like Karazhan and stuff, and I always say like, well, no, we just had it in season 4 of Shadowlands, but it's back. Workshop is back. So definitely my least favorite dungeon from the two, but that's because it's very linear. Now, a funny part about Workshop, and this happened with Upper Karazhan as well, was that the weeks where it was fortified, it was very, very easy, and the weeks where it was tyrannical, it was very, very hard. That's not going to be the case anymore. So, really a lot of the problems in some of the older dungeons are fix based, and those affixes don't exist anymore. So, we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. I think at this point, I'm very, very satisfied with season two's rotation. So, let me know what you guys' thoughts are. Otherwise, stay tuned. We'll see you guys in the next one.